Hi, and welcome to LaunchOver 40 with Yolanda Kennedy. Today, our guest is businesswoman Dee Taylor. She founded her first company, Young Graduate, in 1997. She staged the first ever primary school graduation in the United Kingdom and is now the preferred supplier to many schools, projects, and universities. Today, Dee is now changing the way we seek and fill our careers through her company, Savvy Guest. So, Dee, you're the CEO at Savvy Guest, and, your first business was Young Graduates. And I know a couple of years back when you first started that, you went through some struggles. So, can you explain some of the things you discovered when you created Young Graduate?
Yeah, I think when I started Young Graduates, I had the vision. And Young Graduate was about introducing graduation ceremonies to the younger children, which we didn't actually have in the UK. And it was quite a big thing in America to have it, and also in the Caribbean islands. So I introduced that into the UK in 1997 was the first one. And the sort of obstacles that I came across was it wasn't probably the right timing. I had quite a few doors shut in my face, but it didn't faze me really to continue. What I discovered was I didn't really have the business skills that I needed to take it further. However, what I did, I sort of kept on going in terms of working alongside the business. And with me working, I picked up on things like leadership skills, business management, and those were in my day-to-day roles within my main job. But I just didn't know how to transfer that into my own business. So that was one of the real big obstacles. And then going back to the schools and asking them, or telling them rather, that it was the right time to be doing what I thought was right, but not necessarily what the authorities wanted to do. I did have a business plan. Whether it was the right plan, I sort of pulled information from various resources to put my business plan in place. And I did follow it. Did quite a lot of research as well. And before I knew it, I was into a couple of schools. So it sort of grew from there, but not without the whole cash flow problems, knowing how to sort of go through your sort of figures and understand them as well. Because it was great to bring in cash, but if you didn't have the cash flow to support the business, there was no point in really doing what you was doing, because you was just sort of running the business on a wing and a prayer.
So with Young Graduates, I know that initially, you had the idea. It took like a couple of years, and then you really kind of had the opportunity open up where other people saw the need also. So how many years between your vision and when you actually had the opportunity to go into the first school?
Okay, so it was about 2 years. I had the vision, and I sort of set the wheels in motion of what I wanted to do, and looked at the bigger picture of how I would be helping all these young people in terms of, building on their self-esteem and motivation. It took about 2 years for the first school to take it on board. However, I had to do that on a voluntary basis. There wasn't any exchange of money at that time. I had to prove myself and prove that I was a credible person that could offer a credible service. And I had to do that for 2 years without payment. But that was just one school that I did it with. So that was, I suppose, that was my moment for saying, I've got a vision, I've got a service that I can offer, and I can put it in practice, and I just open the door so I can go in and show you what I can do. And I think I needed to do that in order to be at the next level, because if people had paid for it, at the outset, and there was nothing in the UK to benchmark it against, it would have been quite difficult. So I was open to doing this for nothing initially, for a couple of years with one school.
So what happened after you did the one school after a couple of years? Then other schools saw the benefits?
Well, after the story goes, after I did 2 years of graduations at the same school, I then didn't do anything with it for a couple of years because, again, the timing wasn't right. However, there was an introduction of a government a piece of activity here in the UK called Aim Higher, and that was about bringing a lot of the schools, inner city schools, together and creating a carousel of activities for them in universities and going around workplaces, so young people at an early age could get some kind of work ethic and understand higher education. And one of the parents who had a child at the school I did the first graduations with was the PA to the principal of this university that was taking part. And she came to me and said, look, I remember the graduations and I know you have these gowns, and how much are they to hire? So that was about three years later, after doing nothing. So obviously I said, I'll get back to you, and with a price, which I did. And that was when it opened the doors to the programmes that were out there. So I worked within this government-funded programme for 3 years. I was sort of contracted for 3 years to provide graduations for young children through their programme. And from that, the schools then came to me directly and said, well, we know you provide these cap and gowns for graduation for this programme, but we'd like to do it in our schools independently. So then schools started to book independently with me so they could have their own graduation ceremonies for their school leavers. And it went from sort of one school to 5 schools to 10 schools, and then the universities for the summer school programmes for children. And before I knew it, it was snowballing into something that was a lot bigger than I expected it to be at the beginning.
Oh, wow.
I think the moral of that is just not giving up, because if you give up at the stage when you think it's just not going to happen, it's like digging a hole. You go maybe 2 feet deeper and you find gold, but the person who stops just beyond that 2 feet walks away with nothing. So I would say to anyone, if you really believe in what you do and you know that you can offer or you can show you can do it without having any financial backing in terms of getting payment for the service, just to do one, so they can see what you're actually selling, whether it's service or it's a product or a concept. It opens the door. And a lot of people are saying, I'm not going to do it for nothing, but I had to do it for nothing to be able to get in the market. And to be honest, I wasn't entering a market that I knew anyway. It just happened that the doors opened and I had a niche area and filling a gap that was there.
And now you're the number one supplier?
I am the preferred supplier for young people, for school graduations, for the universities locally in the area, for the summer schools, that is, not for the graduates. These are for young people who go on residential programmes over the summer period into university. They have probably three or 4 days on campus, and then they have a ceremony at the end of it, and we come in to provide these cap and gowns for those young people. So because of just that one moment of someone asking 3 years later for a service that I didn't actually have, that I actually had to build the business around the need at that point. And now I am the preferred supplier, and it is sort of a really good position to be in, to be honest.
I'm sure. So with the first business, you basically did on your own. You did a lot, you offered a lot of your services for free. But now, and how many years since that happened, now that it took you to become the preferred provider? Like, how many years are we talking?
We're talking, I became probably the preferred supplier in 2008. So the first ceremonies were 1997. So it was about 9 years later, I became the preferred supplier, and 2008 till, to 2014. So that's another 6 years since I've sort of continued to do the work here.
Now, looking back, tell me one or two things you would have done different now that you've been through this process.
I think I would have looked at things like overheads differently, because I did go in and got a unit at one point for storage, and it wasn't cost effective because, as you know, these ceremonies take place at a certain time of year, so it's quite a seasonal business. However, we are getting more and more schools and alternative education projects that come to us right through the year. However, I really look at overheads and try not to spend where you don't need to spend. If you've got a product and you can store it in the back of your garden in a garden shed or a homemade office, utilise the resources you have, because that really helps with cash flow. And I had this unit, and I was probably using the space for three months of the year, and for the rest of the year I wasn't really utilising the office. So I did give it up, but I did have it for 3 years. So really it was quite a high spend and not utilising the space. And I think back then networking wasn't as prolific as it is. So if it was, I think I would have been in sort of much more quickly. And again, with the internet and social media, you can utilise these resources quite easily and get your contacts out there and, start meeting with people and networking. But back then we didn't have that. So I would say if I was to do it differently, I'd do a lot of it through social media and, advertising costs and things. Again, I wouldn't pay out for those if I didn't have to.
Well, congratulations, Dee, on being preferred provider, because I'm sure that it was a long struggle. Now, the exciting thing is that you're actually ready to launch a new business called Savvy Guest. Tell me a little more about that.
Right, yeah, Savvy Guest is it's quite new, as in launching next month, the 13th of March. Savvy Guest really has come organically from young graduates, and it's a digital platform that we've created, and it allows people, general public, to meet with employees who are already doing a job role. So you can actually sit down with them over coffee, have a chat with them, so you can find out about their career, their path, what tips of the trade they need to know if they were entering into that industry, and really to give, to get some guidance and advice and maybe underpinning knowledge about a career that you've always thought you wanted to know a bit more about. So we're almost ready to launch this new business, and it's been overwhelming in terms of the companies that have come on board who are willing to offer sort of time for guidance, to give guidance, careers guidance with their staff to the wider communities. We don't currently have a careers advice service here in the UK. I'm not sure what it's like in the United States, but there is no particular platform where you can go and ask these questions anymore face to face.